Hello. I think we're live. I don't know. Okay. I'm just going to assume that we are. Okay, we are good. Hi, baby. Okay, I have 3 really restless cats right now, so we will see how this goes. They are definitely feeling whatever kind of energy is going on right now. I really don't want her to be in my lap, but she's gonna do it. And they're like really depressed too. I have a lot of people messaging me right now just saying that they feel weird, they feel emotional, they feel very down. And yeah, the energy is weird right now. It's not like algal Medusa weird, it's like very dark and disruptive, I would say, and very unpredictable. That's what it feels like, which is honestly what I would expect for really any eclipse, is to feel just that unexpected, like almost panicky, like not sure what's going to happen feeling. But for some reason, and we'll kind of get into this, it just feels more so right now. Okay, so have your chart handy if you have it near you. We're going to talk about basically the basics, and we'll talk about what Sagittarius is. We'll talk about the 9th house, and then we'll get into the alignments, which are super intense. Let me just make sure everything is good right now. Okay, so let me minimize this, make this smaller. Woo! Yeah, I'm just trying to deal with the energy right now. I almost never wear this ring. It's a ruby ring because, I don't know, I've noticed when I wear ruby for too long, I get very, like, masculine aggressive and just, like, very, very irritable, and it feels like the energy is, like, bouncing around everywhere. That's how it makes me feel anyway. But because of the way the energy is now, I feel like it's actually helping. Like, I feel that we almost need that masculine, strong kind of energy right now to balance whatever kind of feminine, but also like chaos feminine energy we're working through right now. Okay, so the new moon solar eclipse. So that is happening on the 4th, very, very early in the morning. In Central Time, it's at 1:43 a.m. Also, let me know how you guys are feeling too. It seems like we're always on this like collective vibe together. Maybe there's like that one person that's like, yeah, I feel great, but like honestly, everyone I'm talking to, nobody feels that great right now. That's okay though. So the eclipse will be happening at 12 degrees 22 minutes of Sagittarius. We'll get into the chart later. There's a lot of interesting things going on. So the eclipse is conjunct the asteroid Sekhmet, which Sekhmet means she mauls. It's like a lioness warrior type of goddess in Egyptian mythology. And, oh my god, I forgot to look up how to say this. I'm pretty sure it's Hecate. I was saying Hecate for the longest time, but then I heard a song on Spotify and it was like Hecate, Hecate. So I think it's Hecate, but I could be wrong. All right, so have your chart handy. Let's just talk about what Sagittarius is and what Sagittarius isn't. So I always learn something new, especially from this book, which is where in the bottom right, that's what the page is from. It is Astrology, Your Place in the Sun by Evangeline Adams. This is like my Bible. Like, I love this book so much. It just puts the zodiac signs in a way that no other book has ever done before. It was apparently ghostwritten by Aleister Crowley, which, you know, he is himself, but he was brilliant. Like, I'll just say it, he was. His energy is scary, though. Okay, Sagittarius. So, the element is fire. The mode is mutable. And honestly, with all the mutable signs, there's like this feeling of restlessness, which can easily turn into anxiety. So not too much different than the opposite sign Gemini. There's like this feeling of like itching to go somewhere, like needing to be unrestrained. Like I just think of like a horse and like how if you own a horse, you have to tame that horse and break its spirit, which is kind of depressing. It's actually really sad, but That's kind of like a Sagittarius, except you're never going to break that horse. Like, they're always going to do what they want to do, and they're always going to be wild and free. I've never met a Sagittarius who was, like, subdued in any way, ever. Like, in any shape or form. The planet is Jupiter, the house is the 9th house, and the symbol is the centaur. So, like the centaur, is half human, half horse. Sagittarius people, you cannot tame them. They can't be tamed, they can't be held back, no one can keep up with them. They're very fast moving. Alright. Just making sure everything is good. Sagittarius is the prophet, the explorer, the philosopher. And I've actually never heard this before. To be honest, I've never read this entire book, and I've had it like my entire life. The sigil for Sagittarius is the rainbow. I don't really know what that means, and to be honest, I didn't look up a deeper explanation, but I just like it. Because, I don't know, it reminds me of that Rolling Stone song, She's Like a Rainbow. That's like such a Sagittarius vibe, for sure. Sagittarius is bold, agile, frank, direct, daring, honest, restless, adventurous, and open-hearted, among with a million other things. So Sagittarius is Jupiter, and it's a very expansive, extravagant, larger than life, like philosopher, looking out on the horizon kind of energy. And Artemis is really like the closest example, deity-wise, of what would explain a Sagittarius. Like Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, that is Sagittarius energy, for sure. There's also this deer connection, too. So let's just read this together, or you can just listen. This is from that book. Persons born from blah, blah, blah. The dates, of course, don't matter. It really depends on what time you were born. Those who have the sign Sagittarius rising at birth, so this is like Sagittarius sun or rising, they will come under the dominion of the fiery, mutable, inspirational sign Sagittarius, symbolized by the centaur, shooting an arrow, and ruled over by Jupiter, the greater fortune. Sagittarius, which is the last of the fire signs, is not so much fire itself as the reflection of fire. I really like that. The symbol of the sign is the centaur, part man and part beast. So I really like that, and that's something to think about. It's like the reflection of fire. Sagittarius is very fiery, but it's not like warm, loving, generous Leo. And it's not really like warrior-ess Aries, which is the fire that wants to fight. It's different. What Rick Levine would always say is that it's like a star burning in a distant galaxy. And that's like Sagittarius. It's very pointed, it's very agile. So wherever Sagittarius is in your chart, that's probably where you want to expand. It's where you want to grow, where you want to or don't want to get out of your comfort zone. But interestingly, Jupiter is actually exalted in Cancer. And the reason being, Cancer is the archetypal mother. So Jupiter being expansive, it's like a pregnant mother. Which it took me a while to understand how that works, because like Cancer is wants to stay in their shell, is very motherly, and usually just likes to feel comfortable before they move forward. And Jupiter just kind of like blows everything up and expands it and makes it huge, but it actually is exalted in Cancer. Okay, so I'm just going to read what I wrote here. They love the open air, outdoor sport, and going on epic adventures. They can be restless in spirit, itching to explore new horizons and taste the open sea that carries them to their next exciting destination. Okay, so this is probably going to be a really random live, but I just want to go on this little journey here. So I just had a feeling, when I was reading about Sagittarius, I just thought Lewis and Clark. So if you're not in the US, Lewis and Clark were these explorers, and they explored a huge part of the US that hadn't been explored before. They went on this huge expedition, and they like mapped out this, gigantic area of the US that hadn't been mapped out before. And I don't know why, I've never looked up their charts. I just had a feeling. I was like, I feel like they're probably Sagittarius, or at least one of them. And it turns out they are, or one of them is. Okay, so this is William Clark's chart. I'm sorry if history bores you at all. I don't know why. Like, I just felt like this stuff was really interesting as I was looking up what to talk about for this live this time around. So this is really interesting because he has the moon in Sagittarius conjunct Jupiter in Sagittarius. So it's like ultimate Sagittarius energy, basically. But he also had Pluto conjunct Black Moon Lilith in Capricorn. And he also had Sun in Leo conjunct Saturn in Leo. They were actually both Leos. It's really interesting if you read historically what people thought about William Clark. I mean, as we know, history has a way of, being made up in a lot of ways and not really reflecting what actually happened. History.com is always a little bit sketch, to be honest. As I was reading about Lewis and Clark expedition, they were like, yeah, everything was great. There really was no violence, and Lewis and Clark just told all the Native Americans that they owned America, and this was their land now. Like, yeah, I'm sure that went really well for them, but they made it seem like it was so peaceful, but like, you know how it is. A really great book is A People's History of the United States. I can't think of the author, and that's like the real history of the U.S., and it will horrify you. It's a very good book, though. Okay. What else about this? So they explored all the way from the Mississippi River, like the whole area that is the Louisiana Purchase, which is a huge area, and they also traveled like all the way out west. Ultimate explorer. So he really interested me in particular, William Clark, because he has these Sagittarius placements. So I was reading about him. He was an explorer, a soldier. So the 9th house and Sagittarius, they both rule laws. An Indian agent. I don't really know what that means. I guess he did like the negotiations with the Native Americans. And he was also a governor. He's like the ultimate Sagittarius. But reading about him was interesting because they were both brutal. So they had like a team. Okay, they had a team of like, I can't find it right now, of like 43 people who were in the U.S. military to come with them. 27 unmarried soldiers, a French Indian interpreter, a contracted boat crew, and a slave owned by Clark named York. So that was their group. And they kind of make it seem like everybody liked them, but like, okay, look at this paragraph. To maintain discipline, Lewis and Clark ruled the Corps with an iron hand and doled out harsh punishments such as bareback lashing and hard labor for those who got out of line. I was like, oh, like the whole thing is so positive and they just kind of like snuck that in there. Like, by the way, they used to whip everybody. I know I shouldn't laugh, it's so terrible, but like, it's just, So I was looking at their charts, I'm like, okay, so what exactly in this chart is causing that behavior? And I'm like, okay, for him, it's probably the Sun in Leo conjunct Saturn in Leo. Like, that's like the kind of like ruler or leader that you feel that warmth if you're on their good side. But like with that Saturn there, I'm like, that's probably like, I don't know, that's the iron hand right there. Maybe the Pluto conjunct Black Moon Lilith is the whipping part, I don't know. And he also had Mars conjunct Uranus. So that's pretty unpredictable. I mean, it is in Taurus. So it is interesting because William Clark and Meriwether Lewis, they both were Leos. And they both had grand earth trines. So they were like getting it done. I mean, if you read about their actual expedition, it's super interesting. Do you want to say anything about that? He also had the North Node, obviously, in Sagittarius, too. Their expedition is really interesting. Reading about Sacagawea is interesting, too. She was a very young Native American. She was pregnant, and she kind of went through this whole thing. I don't remember the story exactly. She was, like, kidnapped by one tribe, I think, and then she was, like, sold to another, and she was pregnant, and I believe she was either still pregnant when she began this expedition with them, or she was like carrying, I think the baby was like 2 months old or something like that. I wish we could find her birth data because it would be really interesting. Apparently she had this like calming presence over everyone, and they all just like loved and adored her. And William Clark actually like adopted her children when she died at the age of 25. I thought that was interesting too. That's like a very noble thing to do. And that's like such a Leo Sagittarius thing, is like being very noble and being very truthful. And it's not just like exploring, it's like holding truth at like the highest honor, you know. Okay, so that's pretty much it about him. I just wanted to talk about him because I don't know, he's just interesting, and he even like looks like a Sagittarius. I'm almost done with this. Always trying to get me to turn off my ad blocker. It's not happening. He just looks like a Sagittarius. You know what I mean? They have that like philosopher, like grand, like I can't think of the words, but he just looks like a Sagittarius to me. And also, he like contributed to some kind of whiskey rebellion, which I thought was really funny too. I don't know what's going on with this guy. It doesn't look good for him though. I have no idea what is happening in that. But okay. Anyways, that's Sagittarius. So where is Sagittarius in your chart? Do you have any planets there? What does that mean for you? Okay, so let's talk about the 9th house. I don't have a regular chart here. This is something from a book I have by Demetra George. So the 9th house is the house of travel, religion, mental studies, usually like higher education. So while the 3rd house, which is kind of like the Gemini house, it's Mercury ruled, is like early schooling, usually the 9th house is like the higher level of learning, of schooling too. So it's usually like higher education, so college, or maybe even like a specialty school or something like that. It's also the house of law, philosophy, and the collective mind. The 12th house is like the collective consciousness, but the 9th house is like literally like the mental studies, like the mind, collective mind. So the 9th house in your chart is the need to explore and expand your horizons. So there's like some interesting little things here. This is from that book I was telling you about with Demetra George. So the 9th house is your need to explore, expand the horizons of your mind and your world. So it's interesting, sometimes if people have Saturn in the 9th house, they have like a fear of traveling or a fear of leaving home, sometimes. It depends on the aspects too. The collective mind, broader viewpoints through travel, religion, mental studies, and philosophy. So that's the thing about Sagittarius. Usually they like traveling, but not always. If it's not physically expanding, reaching out, it's mentally learning. Sometimes it's eating too. I read that about Sagittarius rising, which is what I have, and sometimes those people, myself included, have the tendency just to gain weight because they have like Jupiter appetite, so they just want to eat a lot. And it's like a larger than life, expansive energy until it gets to the boundary of Saturn, and then it kind of like deflates. What else? Also, like psychedelic drugs sometimes too, because that's like expanding the mind. But you can also do that through meditation. It's all about expansion. But it's like the inhale, exhale, you know, Jupiter and Saturn. So Saturn restricts and Jupiter expands. Neptune is on its whole other vibe because Neptune can do whatever it wants. Neptune will expand far, far away, like way into another world past the boundary of Saturn, but Jupiter is just getting to that, and then that exhale is Saturn. What else here? Philosophy. Definitely looking at the bigger picture, looking at what is the higher meaning of this? That kind of thought. So the 9th house is also your search for meaning, truth, and ethical values. That's like the Jupiter side, and then the Chiron side, because Chiron is a centaur of wisdom. It's the wounded healer and the wise teacher. So the Chiron side is your inner knowledge, educational, and healing abilities. So that's all like 9th house stuff. I actually have Chiron in the 9th house. I never knew what that meant, and honestly, I'm so biased with my own chart, I still don't know what it means, to be honest. Okay. These are the Sagittarius tarot cards and also the Wheel of Fortune too is like a Jupiter card. So the ones that I associate with Sagittarius, and I think other people do as well, are the Knight of Wands and the Two of Wands. The Two of Wands is like the definitive Sagittarius card to me because it's like looking out on the horizon, holding the world in your hands. I always see that card as like expanding your vision. Knight of Wands, that's pretty self-explanatory. The Knight of Wands is not the King of Wands. I think the King of Wands is probably Leo, but the Knight of Wands is like the striking young man who has all this energy and is charging forward into his life and has dreams. It literally looks like his clothes are like on fire. That's the kind of energy. Now, the actual official Sagittarius tarot card is actually Temperance, which I didn't know and really surprised me because with that Jupiter energy, you can take things way too far, like way too fast until you get to Saturn and then it stops. Temperance is about blending and like balancing things together and finding that middle ground to temper something. So I thought that was fascinating because the shadow side of Sagittarius is just not doing that and like taking things way too far, way too fast. And that could even be said for like optimism and seeing the good side of things. Most Sagittarius people or Sagittarius placement people, they might see the good to the point where like it doesn't make sense anymore and it becomes almost like that Neptune, like Pisces delusion. And they do tend to be optimistic. When they're scary, it's honestly really scary because, or when they're mad, it's really scary because you're taking that anger and like exploding it with the gaseous Jupiter. So it can be a little bit tricky. I always see Temperance as like the guide card, like the spirit guide card. Whenever I pull this for myself, it's usually when I take things too far. It's always when I take things too far and I'm not listening to my guides and I'm like stuck in that like extreme space, which is kind of like Scorpio, like living at extremes. Temperance is like, no, let's take the centaur, which is half human, half beast, and try to blend those together. Because we can't let go of our egos, we can't let go of our animalistic nature. We have to try to blend those things together. Did I want to say anything about that? No. Okay. Okay, so solar eclipses, they're wild cards. They're very, very unpredictable. Now, this is when from Earth, the moon is actually blocking out the sun. Eclipses come in pairs. So the solar eclipse is flashes of insights and realizations. I see it as like a dance between the conscious and the subconscious. So there's something with like that inhale, exhale kind of energy going on too. Seeing things we may have missed. The light does not always reflect the honest truth. And it has me thinking about like Lucifer and like Luciferianism, the light bringer. Just because it's light doesn't mean it's truth. And sometimes you have to like travel into the darkness to determine if something really is true. And that's like a big problem, I think, right now, because everything looks a certain way and it appears to be a certain way. But if you're not going in your darkness and you're afraid to go there, you might miss like what's really going on. Nothing is what it seems, but it's also the same with like darkness too. Sometimes you have to like take the light into the darkness of like, is this real? Like, is this my subconscious? Did I just make this up to like protect myself? Or does this actually reflect what is going on in the dark? So one is not better than the other. They kind of, I'm thinking of like the Temperance card again. They definitely flow into each other and they need to be balanced. Obviously, we have this like obsession with like masculinity and like sun worship and Saturn worship and the light, and you know, light is not love and dark is not bad, and they can be both for sure. It's more like fluid, I think, than that. And also for this eclipse in particular, because Neptune just went direct, it's pretty much not moving at all in the sky still. It's very, very still. It's technically moving forward, but it will take a while to pick up speed again. So that's like the whole like overarching vibe too, is like the Neptune confusion and fogginess and sensitivity. I wrote here, what is real and what is fantasy? I don't know anymore. What's real and what's not real? That's like the gift and the problem with Neptune, because we can like work with the visions, we can follow the symbols and connect the dots together, but it's really hard to tell what is real, what isn't real. You know, it's very difficult, but at the end of the day too, it doesn't really matter, because if you're seeing it, then that's something that you can work with and learn from. Sometimes I have a hard time with that too in the spirit world. When I'm not sure if I'm making it up or if it's like really happening over there. Sometimes I go through spurts where I can really tell, but ever since Neptune like started to slow down and go direct, like I just can't tell. Like I don't know, like yes and no, or like both and neither, and I don't know. It's all very confusing. Neptune invites us to see beyond the plain as day logic of the sun. The messages of the universe are hidden within symbols, the subtle sensations, and our dreams. Even though Neptune is Neptune, it usually feels pretty feminine to me as well. It doesn't feel feminine necessarily when maybe we're experiencing one of those like epic Neptune surrender moments, when Neptune comes into your reality and just like swooshes everything away like a tidal wave. It's just like, all right, we're taking everything. You have no choice but to let go. Like literally not a choice. Okay, so do I want to talk about Draco right away? Let me see what is going on here. All right, I need a drink of water. All right, let's look at the chart. We'll come back to this. I know when I'm watching videos, I don't personally like to look at the same thing the whole time. Okay. Oh wait, that's William Clark. Okay, we're done with him. So this is the chart of the eclipse. This is the exact moment, 12 degrees, 22 minutes of Sagittarius. So there's quite a few interesting things that are going on here. One of the main ones is that this eclipse is aligned with Draco. Yay! Doing research into Draco is hilarious for so many reasons. I tend to just go with the energy. Like, I couldn't personally tell you, like, who came from there specifically, or, like, how that all works out. I didn't even know about Draco up until, like, 2 years ago, maybe, or, like, any of the constellations, or, like, what that means, or, like, starseeds. I had no idea about any of that. So I'm not really going to talk about that stuff too much, but we'll talk about, like, the overall energy of Draco and what that all really means. And specifically, it's the eye of Draco. It's the eye of the dragon. That's where this eclipse is lined up. I'm going to tell you some stuff that probably blew your mind. I mean, it blew my mind anyway. Okay, so some of the aspects that we have going on here. This is what I noticed about this chart. There is a huge influx of warrior feminine energy coming in. Like, huge. I feel that the strong masculine people in society, they're really, like, holding ground and, like, rooting that into reality. You know, like, we need, like, strong, healed men to, like, help us. Like, we need that. We always get into this, like, polarized thing where, like, all men are bad, and, like, that's just not true, of course. And I feel with this eclipse, there's, like, some serious warrior-esque, like, goddess energy, feminine energy coming in. It's really intense, and it's, like, coming from so many different directions. That's how I feel about this eclipse. As you can see, Venus is conjuncting Pluto, too, so there's just some kind of intensity going on, but how I feel is, like, a snake kind of, like, weaving its way in, but it's, like, 100 snakes, and they're all coming from, like, different goddess deities, like, warrior deities, it's just, like, all coming in, and that's, like, kind of, like, an Ophiuchus vibe, too. Not gonna talk about Ophiuchus, because I literally just learned about him this week. So I'm not going to talk about that, but that's definitely, like, part of this as well. So the main aspects we have, the sun and the moon are actually quincunx Uranus, which is frustration. All the changes that we're going through individually and as a society, it feels very frustrating right now. It doesn't feel good. And like, we know that there's more work we have to do, but like at the time of the eclipse, we might not really know what that is yet. We're going to get a feel for it, but it's going to be like just out of view. It's going to be felt as a frustrating, irritating, uncomfortable, you know, like having an itch kind of energy spiritually, if that makes sense. The sun and moon are actually square Pallas Athene, which I don't have up here right now. It gets like way too chaotic once I start putting in the asteroids and everything. It's squaring Pallas Athene, and it's also septile Hygeia. Okay, this doesn't make sense. Let's just pull up the aspects here. There might be like, okay, that's like all of them. Okay. The sun and the moon are septile Hygeia. Where is Hygeia? Over here. So you can see this pink line right here. Septiles are openings, portals, gateways. It's, in my opinion, allowing that energy to come through. And Hygeia, health, hygiene. Again, this is like healing serpent snake energy. This is like a uranium planet. We're not going to talk about that. But Hygeia in Libra, septile this eclipse. That's important, I think. It's healing. But Venus is also square Hygeia. So, like, our relationships are squared that Hygeia healing. So, it's like the healing is blocked. And what I kind of thought it meant, because Venus is in Capricorn right now, which is the patriarchy, I think it's blocked because of the patriarchy. But Saturn is like actually holding space for this whole thing to happen, because Saturn is sextile Vesta, which is over here in Sagittarius. So Saturn being sextile Vesta, you know, the Vestal virgins, the priestess energy, the sacred fire hearth, I think Saturn is like really anchoring this in and like holding space for this to happen. And like, the feminine energy is coming in strong. Like, we got Hygeia here, we got Vesta. Even with Draco, like, Draco is Draco, but like, this is still like serpent, dragon, dark goddess kind of energy. We also have Mercury opposite Black Moon Lilith, and Venus by quintile Black Moon Lilith. So it's not drawn in here. Here's Black Moon Lilith. So there's just like this strong dark goddess energy coming in. I was thinking a lot about Lilith today and how that kind of applies to all of this, and thinking about how the moon is the moon and Venus is Venus, and how Black Moon Lilith is kind of like forgotten about in astrology. Like, even astrologically, Lilith was like cast out of Eden, you know? We only really pay attention to Venus, but in mythology, Venus comes from Inanna and Ishtar. So it's not like just like a weak, you know, submissive, loving energy. There's nothing wrong with that, and it doesn't mean it's weak, but that's kind of what astrology has done with Venus. Like, oh, it's just love. Oh, it's just peace. But like, Venus comes from Inanna, and like, Inanna is not like that. Inanna is love and war. You know, Ishtar is love and death. It's kind of like the light and the dark goddess, and just like in our reality, in astrology, those things got like torn apart too and split. And that's just something, that story you see over and over and over again. What else here? So there is a Tsquare. Let's get rid of all this stuff because I can't handle it. One of the aspect patterns is this Tsquare here. We have Mars opposing the North Node and then pushing out through Jupiter. And of course, Jupiter is important because this is a Sagittarius eclipse. So let's just think about this for a second. I mean, that's really wide, but I still think it's relevant just because it does exist. And I think it's pushing out through Jupiter to again harmonize and to bring in some kind of feminine energy that we're lacking right now. I highly recommend grounding. I actually have my other ruby crystal in front of me right now. I was like, okay, I'm definitely feeling this. This is garnet. This is a garnet crystal. And I have my like smoky quartz, this like black quartz too. I don't even know if I want to talk about this Tsquare anymore because that's like a really, really wide aspect. So we have Mars and Scorpio. Scorpio is feminine, but that's like the warrior opposing the North Node. I just can't help but feel that like the patriarchy and like the unhealthy masculine, the chaotic masculine that is like just toxic, like it's not going to help us get to where we need to be. It's not going to help us get there. What else here? So Black Moon Lilith is also opposing Mercury, like I said, and is pushing through, it's not drawn in, pushing through Neptune. So we have the dark goddess Lilith, and we have Sagittarius, let's just say that it's masculine. It's a very, like, grandiose, like, out in the open kind of masculine energy, to me anyway, is pushing through Neptune. I wrote something about this. What did I have to say about that? I don't remember. There's something with Neptune there. Man, I just feel like, I don't know, energetically, like all the planets are working together, like all of the energy sources are working together to like make this happen right now, and it's really powerful. And of course, it is being inverted and like used for other gross purposes. But if we can like really channel into that and use our groundedness, use our own Saturn to anchor that in, you know, Saturn in Aquarius, this is the new way, the new world. It's going to be very transformational, and it's going to be felt for a very, very long time, I think. There's also this other triangle here. I don't know what kind of triangle this is. It's connecting the North Node with Pluto and with Mars. This is a powerful eclipse, like, you guys. Like, if you're not feeling it already, I feel like we're going into, like, a black hole, but it's, like, darker than that. It's like we're going into the underworld again. Okay, I kind of wrote that it's like a volcano. Alright, so where are we at? Alright, so that is the main stuff. There's also like Hera being pulled into our current timeline. There's a battle going on, except, you know, the snake is underground. You can't stop that. You can't stop the building of tunnels, and because everyone is like so focused on the light all the time, there's like all kinds of stuff going on in the darkness. We can do our work there, we can work our magic in there, we can get back our power in the dark, but just because of how distorted things are and how much the light has been manipulated, it's just not going to work anymore. It's not going to work with where we need to be. Creating balance, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create balance, right? We're not trying to do that other stuff with the light. We're going to look at the actual chart on astro.com because I don't have the full asteroid plug-in. Here. What else do we have? Hecate is, what about Hecate? Hecate is actually trine the sun and moon. So again, that like dark magic, the dark goddess, the dark magic, bringing that in. This is like the crossroads. This is the gateway. This is like the moment of truth, where we can't lie to ourselves, and we have to face ourselves, and we have to face the truth in the darkness of society. And it's like the torches too. What is the torch, really? There is a fiery feminine that would be Lilith kind of energy, but the masculine also needs to play into this. We have to like root that masculine, and by rooting it and making it all that it is and that it can be in the best, like healthiest way, that is the way, I think. Sekhmet is also conjunct the eclipse, and Anubis is square the sun and the moon. Anubis. Where is Anubis? There it is. So the Egyptian god of the underworld. Again, it's like the masculine, the patriarchy is being blocked. This feminine energy is coming. Like, it's coming in. The dark goddess is here. She is ready. She's been waiting for this moment, and they're all going to work together to make it happen. this is really all I want to say about this, because I want to talk about Draco, because that's really the next most important thing. Or honestly, it's like the most important thing. Okay. I feel like I'm talking faster than my brain can handle right now. Draco! Draco is the celestial dragon / serpent. So in pretty much all of the mythologies, the dragons were like serpents with like 4 feet, is how it's usually depicted. Like in every country, the solar eclipse is conjunct the fixed star, I'm supposed to say star, Alwade. I'm just going to say that it's Alwade, which ancient astrologers called it the nebulous star in the dragon's eye. Okay, so Draco is an intense energy. It's the energy of Mars and Saturn. The traditional name for this star in particular is Rastaban. I don't know how to say it. Rastaban. Comes from the Arabic phrase that, which means head of the serpent. So this eclipse is exactly conjunct the eye of the dragon. Like, oh my gosh, like if this, it's just like one thing after another. It reminds me of like the end of a really epic like classical song, and there's like those cymbals hitting at the end, like it's all just coming to a head. And like first we have it with Algol, and now we have it with the Eye of the Dragon. Like, you can't tell me that this is all just on accident. It's just wild. So Draco is the energy of Mars and Saturn. Now let's think about this for a second. Mars is charge ahead warrior. Mars wants to win. Mars is fiery. Mars wants to fight and win at all costs. Saturn is the rules. Saturn is the concrete wall, the impenetrable wall that you can't get through. This is the boundary. This is the structure, the hierarchy. This is the way that it is. They don't go together. They don't get along at all. Mars-Saturn aspects are considered to be really unfortunate, which is really funny because my boyfriend and I's strongest synastry aspect is Mars square Saturn. And we kind of like switch back and forth, like who's going to be Mars today? Who's going to be Saturn today? All right, let's go, But anyways, Mars and Saturn together, especially like in a square aspect, is like literally driving 100 miles per hour and hitting a brick wall that you just can't get through. It's the disruption of energy. So in all of like the ancient astrology texts, they're like, this is the worst, it's the monster. They don't say demon. It's really interesting to me that like when it's like a feminine star, they're like, it's a demon, for sure. It's a devil. But then when it's like the masculine one, they're like, oh, it's a dragon. What the heck? So early astrologers called Draco, quote, the poisonous dragon. The constellation is especially hurtful, and this is like a quote too from, I think this is from Astrology King, which they use like, basically the main ancient astrology text usually to write out like what it means. The constellation is especially hurtful to mineral resources and presages the pollution of rivers and the air. So this was interesting. They're talking about, in my mind, like depletion of resources and pollution to the natural world. The moon's nodes are named after this constellation. The dragon's head, the north node, and the dragon's tail, the south node, refer to the moon's course, symbolized by the twisting of the dragon around the North Pole. It was said by the ancients that when a comet was here, poison was scattered all over the world. Okay, so worst rap ever, poison. There's a big thing with like toxicity and poison, which to me, that's like the serpent. It's like the serpent's bite. The remedy for like a snake bite is often contained within the venom itself. So that's like the energy I'm getting from that. And depletion of resources, pollution of the natural world. Now this is where, I don't want to like talk about this too much, but this is where the whole reptilian thing comes in. Draco has a vibe and it's very dark. And I do think that there is truth to the stories, and there's truth in how people feel about it, because all you have to do is like look at that part of the sky and you're like, yes, there's something dark coming from that area. This is where the reptilian thing comes in. I don't remember the stories exactly. It's basically, I think they destroyed their own world, the Draconians, and they came here and enslaved humanity and just doing what they've always done, basically. This is where things get a little bit weird. So this star is obviously very unfortunate. Hitting a brick wall at 100 miles per hour. Mars and Saturn, it can be worked out, but the thing with like Draco is that it is what it is, and they've always done things that way, which maybe is the Saturn part, and then maybe like the enslaving part could be like Mars too. I can kind of see like where the Mars and Saturn thing comes from. So this is the exact star. This is like the laziest slide, but this is the exact star. Now just look at this star and tell me what you feel from this. Without looking at what I wrote. But anyway, I wrote Darth Vader vibes because that's what I feel. It's like that very like militant, cold, brutal, like violent kind of energy. That's what I feel from this star. Algol, totally different vibe, but this star has a very... You know, when I look at it, it's not necessarily like, oh, it's evil, it's dark, but like, it just is what it is. It's Mars and Saturn. It's aggressive and violent, but it's also strong and structured. And I'm just thinking of Darth Vader and like the Death Star and like how the interior looked. That's how like I feel about this star. It's ridiculous, I know. So this is the star, this is the constellation here. This is from Astrology King as well. So this is the star we're talking about. It's right in the eye, Rastavan, which is Alwaid. It's a vibe. Okay, so this is where I started just channeling things. So let's get into that. Ayin. All right. Did you guys see the post that I made on Instagram about Ayin and about that whole thing? I'm not going to say the word in case the overlords hear me on here. Okay. So I'm going to read what I wrote first about this. Because astrology will only take you so far. You have to like tap into the energy, right? So this is what I wrote about Draco. We, the people, were seeing things from their eyes. The Draconians, the reptilians, whatever you want to call them, the ones who have enslaved humanity. When we can see with their eyes, are we also evil ourselves? Or is the lens simply tainted with selfishness and brutality? They, the Draconians or whatever, they came here to continue doing what they've always done, but somehow this truth, this seed, also exists within us. It has to in order for them to continue to control us. The seed is planted within the eye, the third eye. This is where we're getting into this. The eye, right? The eye. I made this just for the live. Okay, let's go back. Again, I'm not going to say the word because the overlord's watching. That means I. Okay. I can't. Okay, so that word that we've been seeing, it comes from that letter in particular. So it's a lowercase O. So it means small o, and the letter O comes from Ayin, which is a Phoenician letter. And what does Ayin mean? It means I. It's the 16th Hebrew letter. I'm getting ahead of myself here. It's the 16th Hebrew letter, and it means I. Okay, so now tell me, is it coincidence that we have this thing come out, and then we have an eclipse, and then we have an eclipse in the eye of the dragon, of Draco. Like, is that coincidence? Like, come on now. Like, they have astrologers, like, they know exactly what's going on here. So not only does Ayin, which is where that O word comes from, mean eye and to see, it also means to understand and obey. It sees and doesn't speak. I hope I don't sound sarcastic right now. I'm just like really honestly shocked about this whole thing. It sees and it doesn't speak. Think about that for a second, okay? This is just another source that is what ayin means. I, to see, and by extension, to understand and obey. Man, I'm getting so much ringing in my ears right now, so I don't know if that's like you guys right now, but I hear it. Oh, it also means sheep. Can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just too much. The sheep looking towards the shepherd watching his sheep. It has like that overarching like ruler kind of mentality, because in some instances it also means like God looking down on his people and people looking up at their God. It's like that kind of like, I'm thinking of like the temperance thing again. It's not temperance though. It's definitely like an overarching rulership. So in the Kabbalah, in the Tree of Life, you can walk the path of ayin, which is like discernment, using discernment, which is very connected to the eyes as well. So with all that being said, okay, the Eye of the Dragon, the ayin, yeah, what do you think of that? It is not on accident. I even noticed that YouTube is updating their like terms or something on the day of the eclipse. I'm just like, man, it's just like too obvious sometimes, and it's like so obvious and in our face in the light that like we miss it sometimes, you know? I was talking with Jamie, and she said that basically they gave us these powers just to take them away and enslave us, to enslave humanity. But it's almost like we're getting them back right now. And like I really do feel that too. I mean, I didn't think of it myself at all. It definitely resonates, and I think that's powerful. And it makes me think of Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter only defeated Voldemort because he had part of Voldemort within him. It's like that kind of energy. So, with Draco and the I and the ayin, basically to sum up with that, I do believe that most people are good. I'm one of those people, I think they really want us to believe that most people are not good, and I just don't think that's true. It definitely became like a fault of mine to always see the good in people. I still can, you know, no matter what, I still do. I think that most people are good. What does good mean? I think that most people on some level, they want to do good and they want to give and receive love. I do believe that, personally. Just based on my experiences with other people and like seeing into their darkness and like exploring those spaces, I do think that most people are good. But there's trauma, there's abuse, there's physical injuries, they change people. I'm thinking of psychopaths, basically. Not everybody is a psychopath. There are different things that can happen. Now, if you abuse somebody, they can turn off that like decision-making part of their brain. They can literally turn it off, and they've done studies about this, where they turn it off and they like, it reminds me of Vampire Diaries, like turning off their humanity. People can actually do that. Like that's like a real thing. Or people who get brain injuries too, like 9 times out of 10, they like end up in jail, like or prison. I just read this in like an ADHD book, but that destroys like the decision-making part of their brain. So it kind of like turns them into a psychopath in a way, but not everybody is a psychopath. And this is my personal opinion, that the people who are ruling this world, which it's like the same families, you know, it's been documented, it's the same families, just like intermarrying. Like, I don't think that the main people, like where these bloodlines started from, like, I just don't think they're entirely human, because they are psychopaths. Like, I'm sorry, they just are. They don't have like that compassion. They don't have that empathy for people. And it's like, yeah, you can definitely say that they're evil, but like I think they just like literally can't. Like they don't have it in them, I don't think. Personally, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know where I was really going with that, but there's some kind of like good versus evil thing going on here. What does that really mean? I do think that there is like some kind of like DNA or seed that has been planted that can make people not be good, or like not want to do good, not want to give and receive love. There's a lot of different ways that can happen. Now the thing with this third eye, you know, the seed is planted within the third eye. that changes your perception. That changes your lens. And if that doesn't freak you out, like, I don't know what's going to. Like, that freaks me out. It has to do with the thing. Okay, so it's been almost an hour. I don't want to talk more than an hour. So let's pull some cards. Just think about that. There's really no one way to, like, interpret that, but that's just what I'm feeling. It's really up for interpretation. So, okay, so let's pull some cards. I'm just going to do this on the spot. It's always better that way. The Siren. Oh my gosh. Talk about dark feminine. Ah! The Venom. Okay, 2 perfect. I'm just going to pull one more. And the Shaman. Do I even have to, like, get into that? The Sirens in ancient mythology, they were actually birds. They were not mermaids or, like, sea creatures. They were originally birds, which the whole, like, demoness birds of the air thing, I have a live about that. That's, like, the Morgan. It's also the Sirens too. The Sirens were, basically, they're these mermaids, these sea creatures that have these beautiful voices. Oh my gosh. I was just listening to Lily Boulanger's, I don't know how to say her last name, her song, The Sirens, before I did this live. I swear to God. I was listening to that song. It's a beautiful song. Look it up. It's in French, so it's Les Siren with an ES at the end. Yeah, that's weird. Okay. So they have a beautiful voice where men would basically jump to their deaths off the ship, like, as soon as they heard that sound. And, I don't know, they would, like, consume their souls, the sirens or whatever. Just kind of, honestly, a weird story that I think has to do with, like, women's, like, Shakti, you know? Men are, like, so threatened by that, like, their attraction to women, like, that's really what it is. You know, any goddess, any deity that they couldn't just, like, make into, like a celestial virgin, they're just like, that's a demon, for sure. And that was done to the Morgan, too, of course. She definitely cannot be contained. Can you really contain any deity, though? So the venom, the solution is in the actual venom itself. So this is kind of coming back to that Draco, like, we have that too. There's some kind of connection as we're seeing it this way, as they're, like, trying to make us see things their way. But the solution is also in that. And again, with snakes, like, sometimes you need the actual venom to be able to make the antidote. And that's true. And the Shaman. There's an eye on this too with, like, 3 skulls. With, like, a diamond and a snake. Oh yeah, there's a snake right there. Okay, this is, like, way too much. Beautiful. Let's do our work for sure on this eclipse. I'm gonna pull some regular cards too. We need that one for some reason. I always shuffle 3 times. I don't know why, I was just told to do that. There is hope. This is the card that came out first. This is an interesting card. It definitely gives me, like, Gemini juggler vibes. Oh, great. I don't want to say that, but, like... oh, okay. What is this reading? Okay. So I do 2 in the past, 1 in the present, and then 2 in the future. So for the faraway past, I have the Tower. And then the recent past, I have the 10 of Cups. Those are, like, 2 cards that I just would never associate with each other. This is the present card. Not a great card. I don't like this card. See, I'm, like, judging it. I'm judging it too much, but I can't help it. In the near future, the 3 of Swords reversed, which is painful, but it's, like, healing too. And then the 7 of Cups in the faraway future. All right, this is a lot. So, in the past, I feel that the things that we thought because this is called a stage card. See how it looks like they're actually on a stage because they're not on the ground? The things that we thought would bring us emotional fulfillment aren't. And they're actually deceptions. They're actually lies. It's just an illusion. It's just Neptune. And this in the present, the Seven of Swords. See, the things that are so hard for you, for me, for us to let go of, they were just illusions. They're not real. They were never real. It was things that people told us were going to make us happy. If you look in these cups, there's like a giant castle, there's a serpent, there's also like gems, and there's also a dragon on it too. It's illusions. It's illusions that have been programmed into us to keep us weak, to keep us not emotionally, spiritually fulfilled. We were told to do those things. We were told to go after those things, but they don't bring us real happiness. And it was all for the purpose to like serve someone, something, some other group. And it looks like it's just one person, but it's not. It's bigger than that. And it's going to hurt. And I think we're going to have to let go of like what we thought those things were going to be. It's not going to be what we thought. We got to really heal ourselves, I think, right now. Like, heal your heart. Because everything that you thought you knew, everything that you were told was going to make you happy, it's not. It's clearly not. It's like, we're not happy with it now. We're never going to be happy with it because it's not real. There's no truth to it. There's no groundedness. There's nothing to grasp because it was all Neptune. It was all an illusion. And there's some kind of like, this could be for me, but it could be for all of us too. There's some kind of like mental health stuff going on too, like anxiety, fear. This is like a heart, but there's also swords in the heart. So it's like sadness and grief and everything is like a construct of the mind too. It doesn't mean it's not real, but it's something with like the mental health too. And I didn't bring this deck down here, but these two just kind of like slipped in, so I thought we needed to see them. The first one has a bunch of starfish on it, and like clownfish and other fish, and it says Night Sky is the name of the art. Night Sky. Just reminds me of something. I don't know. So this is card number 20. It's about flexibility. When people think of flexibility, they think of the body. I am not flexible, or I am very flexible. Or they can think the mind. This with the same questions. The two go hand in hand. We're all flexible in our bodies when we are born. Through life, tension, and overuse, we basically become very tightened, and the same goes with our mind. Through experience, we become stubborn and closed off. So which are you, flexible and inflexible? Think about how being inflexible in body prevents us from doing physical activities we may like to accomplish. This is so true, and this is something I learned with yoga. Like, I held on to everything in my body, always. Like, I played sports, basketball, like competitive stuff. That's the stuff that I like to do. But I never stretched, like in practice we're like, okay, great, let's go, let's run. That's probably why I have so many issues now. But once I started doing yoga, like, as you work out that inflexibility and, like, those tough spots in your body, you release it in your mind, and you release it in your heart and in your spirit, too. So that's important now for some reason. I should go stretch after this. And then there's this other card with, like, these hands touching the earth with, like, a spiral at the top. And this card is called Caring. Caring for others and caring for ourselves is so important. Compassion is what makes this life worthwhile. Knowing that by helping others and taking a personal interest in others, it's your fuel to knowing what is truly important in life. We came here alone and we will leave alone, but along the way we interact with others. We meander along the path of life together. So to do that the right way, we need to walk side by side, caring for them, taking interest in them. Walk together on this cooperative journey of life to bring joy to everyone's existence. So take care in taking care of others and taking care of ourselves. Well, that's beautiful. It's a nice note to end on. Why is this card called the Night Sky, though? That's what I want to know. Interesting. All right, that's all I have. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments. I hope that was helpful to you in some way. Yay! It's very... Hey, at least this is in the past, right? But somehow these realizations, like these eclipse realizations, they're just like fueling the whole thing, like continuing into the future. Also with this card, stop trying to do everything yourself. For the love of the lords, the gods. Stop trying to do it all yourself. It might seem fun when you're balancing 500 million things by yourself, but it's gonna get stormy. So, okay,